So if the rent is 100,000 a month, in order to just move into that apartment, you gotta pay 5 or 6 months in different fees. You have the real estate agent fees, you have the deposit, and then you have something called key money in Japan. Thank you for letting me stay in your apartment. こんにちは皆さん、アントンです。私のチャンネルへようこそ。Thanks guys for watching my video. My name is Anton and welcome to Tokyo. In this video, I will talk about why I decided to buy an apartment, the biggest city in the world. I only stayed here for 8 months and I thought I understood the culture, the language, what was going on around me. But now, 2.5 years later, I don't really do it now, so no way I did it back then. What led me to this decision is strongly connected to my career as a fashion model. I've been very fortunate to live in amazing places like New York, London, Paris, Milano, Australia, and now Japan. As a model, even though you make good money, you kind of always stay in shitty conditions. I remember my first ever model apartment in Milano. It was probably me and 15 other boys staying in this moldy, dark, smelly model apartment in the suburbs of Milano. Like, we had so long days running around on castings, doing fashion shows, fashion week. And then you got home and it was just full of people everywhere. You kind of live in your suitcase. You stay in one place for a few months, then you move on to the next one for a few months, and then to the next one, and then you go home in between, etc, etc. You never really have a base, so you don't really have time and money to invest in a good accommodation. So you let the agency or Airbnb decide where you're gonna stay. And even though I stayed in New York for a few years or Milano for a few years, and people ask me, where are you living? And I told them, I live in Milano. I live here. Okay, that's cool, but when are you leaving? No, I'm not gonna leave, I'm staying here. Oh, that's cool, but when are you leaving? And they were right. I left those places. When I came to Japan, people always asked me the same thing, which kind of makes sense because most models come here like me the first times, 2 months, and then they leave, and then back next year, 2 months, and then they leave again. But I really knew Japan was my place, and I wanted to stay here. So the first thing I did was to talk to my manager and leave the model apartment. And I asked him for advice, and he told me to check on Craigslist. And I found an amazing share house in Harajuku, Sangenjaya. I had amazing roommates, and the owner of the share house, Shingo-san, we're still in contact, and he taught me a lot about Japan, how the housing market works, etc, etc. A few months after I moved here, I met another good friend of mine, and he told me there are 2 ways for Japanese people to really accept you in Japan, despite being a foreigner. And the first thing is getting married to a Japanese woman. I didn't have a Japanese girlfriend ready getting married, except for work, because that's kind of what I do. And the second thing was buying a property in Tokyo. And every time people ask you, where do you live? No, I live in Japan. Okay, that's cool, but when are you going back? No, I'm not going back. I live here. I have an apartment here. And that's kind of easier to understand. My friend was totally right. I didn't realize it at that time, but I feel like Japanese people really accept me more in society now. Also, I've been here longer. I understand the culture better. My Japanese is getting better. こんにちは皆さん、アントンです。私のチャンネルへようこそ。But I think one big reason to this is also that I have an apartment here. So thanks to my Canadian friend who told me these things from his own experiences, I started looking into buying a place here. And the Japanese real estate market doesn't work at all as the Swedish real estate market, for example, where there are no rentals at all and you basically have to buy a place in order to move out from your parents' house. In Japan, it's kind of the opposite. There are tons of free apartments everywhere. And when signing up for a lease in Japan, you gotta sign up for 2 years with a guarantor, someone who guarantees you that if you don't pay the rent, they will pay the rent instead of you. You gotta sign up for 2-3 years contract, and then they have these stupid fees here. Reikikin, shikikin, and then the real estate fees. So if you've ever been to Japan, you've seen all these real estate agencies. You go to Roppongi, you go to Shibuya, you go anywhere and you see there are like real estate agencies just lined up next to each other. And how is that possible? So let's say you see a Japanese real estate ad where the rent is 100,000 yen, about $1,000 a month. The actual rent a month would be about 120,000 to 130,000. So if the rent is 100,000 a month, in order to just move into that apartment, you gotta pay 5 or 6 months in different fees. You have the real estate agent fees, you have the deposit, and then you have something called key money in Japan, which is basically gift money to the owner. This is a very old system. So you're basically paying 1 or 2 or 3 months in some cases to the owner. Thank you for letting me stay in your apartment. And this is something I've never heard of anywhere else in the world. But anyway, so let's say you're signing up for 100,000 yen a month apartment. In order just to move in there, you gotta pay 600,000 yen in different fees. So thanks to my Canadian friend, I started looking into options. He taught me a lot. What real estate agencies to use, who to talk to, what to avoid, etc., etc. I started going to showings and I found my place. I fell in love with the potential of the place. And I'll talk more about that in my next movie, about how and why I chose the apartment that I bought. I wanted my own place. I wanted my base. I wanted to stay in Japan, the country that I love. And that are the main reasons why I decided to buy a place in Japan after only been living here for 8 months. Thank you for watching till the end. These are the reasons why I decided to buy a place in Japan. And if you have any questions, please let me know. If you need me to give you any advice on something.